A three-day workshop marked the beginning of an initiative led by the Coalition Paysan de Madagascar, CPM, in partnership with ISAF, Eastern and Southern Africa Small-Scale Farmers Forum. The initiative aims to promote greater recognition and integration of the needs and interests of smallholder farmers into public policies, while increasing financial resources and budget allocations dedicated to climate change adaptation, food security, and improved nutrition across Eastern and Southern Africa, ESA. Mahanoro is a coastal district located in the Atsinanana region of Madagascar. It is frequently struck by tropical cyclones, which cause severe damage almost every year. The local population lives in scattered settlements deep in the forest, often far from one another. Malnutrition and food insecurity are widespread, particularly among children under the age of 5. These conditions clearly illustrate how climate change has already become a serious threat to people's lives and livelihoods. The workshop in Mahanoro was officially opened by the president of CPM with a brief address. He stressed that we are not organizing workshops simply for the sake of holding workshops, but because continuous action is needed to combat environmental degradation. He also expressed his appreciation to the government authorities for honoring the event with their presence and support. The opening ceremony was attended by the Deputy District Chief and the Deputy Mayor of Mahanoro Urban Commune. Representatives from the Ministries of Agriculture, Livestock, and Public Health were also present. Special recognition was given to representatives of the National Office of Nutrition, ONM, the Forest Service, journalists from the Public Radio, RNM, and Public TV, TVM, representatives of CPM at both the national and regional levels, as well as local farmer leaders and members. The Executive Secretary of CPM explained the objectives and agenda of the workshop. He stated, "The workshop aims to raise awareness of climate change and to provide training for all stakeholders, including farmers, on three closely related areas: agriculture and livestock production, climate change, and nutrition." The first presentation was delivered by Mr. Tsiriniana Jean de Matha, local head of the Sirasa Agricultural District Office in Mahanoro. He explained the causes of climate change and highlighted its significant impacts on agriculture. Participants were then given the opportunity to ask questions, all of which were answered immediately. The next presentation was delivered by Mr. Randria Naramanana Solofoniana Andri, local head of the National Office of Nutrition, ONM, in Mahanoro. His presentation covered several important topics, including the importance of proper nutrition, the 5 most common childhood illnesses, the care and treatment of sick children under the age of 5, and the key stakeholders involved in the fight against malnutrition. He also explained the main causes of malnutrition and described the government's ongoing vitamin A supplementation program. Following the presentations, participants shared their views and proposed practical solutions to help combat malnutrition. Throughout the session, participants actively raised questions, which were answered and clarified by the resource persons. The CPM Executive Secretary then presented several international agreements whose implementation is expected to bring significant benefits to individual countries. Among them was the Paris Agreement, adopted in 2015 and in force since 2016. He explained that its primary objective is to keep the increase in global average temperature well below 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels while pursuing efforts to limit it to 1.5 degrees Celsius. The agreement also seeks to strengthen countries' capacity to adapt to climate change and to mobilize financial support for the most vulnerable nations. He also presented the Kampala Declaration, which promotes the transformation of agriculture across Africa. Its objectives include strengthening food security and nutrition, promoting sustainable and climate-resilient agriculture, increasing agricultural productivity, encouraging investment in the agricultural sector, and providing greater support to young people and women. The presentation also covered Madagascar's national climate change strategy. Particular emphasis was placed on the important role of farmers' organizations in preparing and reviewing the country's nationally determined contributions, NDCs. Madagascar is currently implementing its third NDC, NDC3, and CPM was among the organizations consulted during its preparation. Mr. Jean de Matha, head of the Agricultural Department in Mahanoro, delivered a presentation on climate finance. He explained that several international funding mechanisms are available to support climate action, including the Green Climate Fund, GCF, the Global Environment Facility, GEF, the Adaptation Fund, and the International Fund for Agricultural Development, IFAD. All of these financing mechanisms are intended to support efforts to combat climate change. The local responsible of the government livestock department in Mahanoro then explained that climate change is having a direct impact on the food security and nutrition of local communities. He stated, "There is a government-funded processing facility at the port. It was originally designed to process honey and fruit. However, after further assessment, it was found that the facility did not meet the required standards for honey processing. It was therefore converted into a cassava and sweet potato processing plant." As explained during this workshop, this infrastructure was financed through public funds, government programs, and development projects. Yes, advocacy is indeed one of the key themes of this workshop. Our objective is to ensure that infrastructures already established, whether by NGOs, development projects, or the government, are effectively put into operation and serve the communities for which they were intended. The responsible of the National Office of Nutrition, ONM, in Mahanoro also explained to participants the impact of climate change on nutrition and children's health, the ongoing fight against malnutrition, and the role of the ONM in addressing these challenges. Participants were then divided into two working groups. Both groups discussed the same questions. What does advocacy mean to you? And what advocacy action should be undertaken in Mahanoro? Each group later presented its conclusions. Women actively participated in the group discussions. They confidently shared their views, and some even served as spokespersons to present their group's findings during the plenary session. The first working group defined advocacy as all actions aimed at influencing decision-makers to respond to clearly identified needs and requests. According to the group, effective advocacy requires concrete implementation supported by detailed technical, material, and strategic arguments. The second working group, whose report was presented by an elder community member, concluded that there is an urgent need to construct water storage facilities and to rehabilitate essential infrastructure serving farmers. The group also recommended that climate change education be incorporated into the national school curriculum. At the end of the discussions, the participants unanimously agreed on two priority advocacy issues: improving the operational capacity of the cassava and breadfruit processing plant in Mahanoro so that it can increase both its production volume and overall productivity; rehabilitating the drinking water storage facilities in Betsizarina. Once these two advocacy priorities had been identified, the participants established a PETS committee, Public Expenditure Tracking Survey, to lead the advocacy process. Mr. Randimbison Hadja, local head of the livestock department, was elected chairperson of the PETS committee. The 15 members of the newly established PETS committee gathered with CPM technicians for a commemorative group photograph. The PETS, Public Expenditure Tracking Survey, committee is responsible for leading the advocacy process. The first site visited was the cassava and breadfruit processing plant located at the river port of Mahanoro. The chief of the PETS committee explained, "We are the PETS committee. Our role is to monitor the use of public funds. Our committee brings together representatives of farmers, farmers' organizations, livestock breeders, the CPM Farmers Network, ESAF, the Forest Technical Services, the Health, Agriculture and Livestock departments, as well as members of the local media. We are here to examine government-funded projects that are no longer operating. We want to understand why they have stopped functioning, identify the problems, and undertake advocacy to ensure that these infrastructures become operational again. The committee was then welcomed by the owner of the processing facility. Welcome. My name is Gaspard, owner of Gastprod. Gastprod is an agro-processing company that works closely with local farmers. The factory was established under the Prospera program. It was originally intended to process both honey and fruit. However, it was later found that honey processing and fruit processing could not be carried out in the same facility under the required standards. As a result, the decision was made to specialize in breadfruit and cassava processing. Despite its potential, the factory is operating below capacity because several essential pieces of equipment are still missing. Under normal conditions, the plant should be capable of processing 600 kilograms of produce within a 4-hour working shift.
Tsy ampy ny vokatra avy amin'ny orinasa manao sakafo io noho ny tsy fahampian'ny fitaovana sasany eo an-tanana.
The committee's second field visit took place in Betsizarina, where members inspected a solar-powered electricity generation system that is currently out of service. The solar installation powers the equipment used to pump water from a storage basin to the village's elevated water tank. The water tower was built many years ago, when the village had only 4,000 inhabitants. Today, the population has grown to approximately 9,000, making the rehabilitation of the water supply system even more urgent. These infrastructures and all the efforts being made here are for your benefit, not for ours. The committee was then received by the mayor of Betsizarina, who was briefed on the objectives and mission of the Pets Committee. A committee representative explained, "Our committee brings together representatives of farmers, CPM, ESAF, the Public Health Department, the head of the Forest Service, and members of the local media. Our mission is to assess public infrastructures that have been financed with government funds, identify the reasons why some of them are not functioning properly, and undertake advocacy to ensure that they are put into effective use for the benefit of the community." The fourth day concluded on Saturday the 13th of June, 2026, with a courtesy visit to the District Commissioner at his office. Once again, the committee presented its mandate, its objectives, and the role it intends to play in monitoring public expenditure and promoting accountability. Wherever the committee went, it received a warm welcome. It quickly became clear that its work would make a valuable contribution to improving the living conditions of local communities. Although the traditional Focanalona structure has long played an important role in community life, it cannot by itself carry out the specific responsibilities assigned to the Pets Committee. The committee is not intended to replace or diminish the authority of the Focanalona. Rather, the two structures are expected to complement and support one another. On Monday the 15th of June, 2026, participants met to review and summarize all the activities carried out during the first 4 days of the workshop. The closing ceremony was attended by the District Commissioner and the Mayor of Mahanoro Urban Commune, who officially brought the workshop to a close. The Pets Committee will now continue the work it has begun by monitoring public administration and the implementation of publicly funded projects, while pursuing evidence-based advocacy to ensure that these initiatives effectively serve the interests of the population.